appreciate all of you coming out tonight. You know everybody's busy and all your kids are home doing homework, right? And at least I hope mine are. So we really appreciate you being here. And I would like to introduce to you our fantastic principal, Miss Kimberly Bolden. And she's going to talk to you briefly about her goals for this year. And I think I saw a new grading scale that she had in her hand. And I think some of you have already seen that on Headline. I saw something about 10% for something. And try to calculate that, see if that's going to be good for my kids. You know, that's going to be better than last year. And then I'd also like to introduce to you our very experienced administrative team that she has working with her and with all the kids. So first, assistant principal for 12th graders, Mr. Joe Manana, right here. And then assistant principal for the 11th graders, Mr. Joe Du Bois. And assistant school administrator, Ms. Crystal Dugman, 10th grade. And then new this year, also very experienced, assistant principal, Dr. Ira Thomas, 9th grade. Okay, all right. So much.
Well, thank you all so much for coming out tonight. This PTSA works incredibly hard, and they're full of energy. And so it's so great. I wanted to say thank you to the board, and thank you, Kenya, and Lisa, and Diana, and Julie, everyone. There's so many people that work for this together. It's incredible. So thank you all very much. I'm so excited to be here this evening and to, when we talked about this, I asked for any hot topics that we wanted to discuss tonight after giving a bit of an overview of staff and what we do and how we do and supporting our students. And so I thought what we would do is start with each of the principals, have them introduce themselves and say a little bit about each one, and then I'll come back and give you some information, and then we'll do more Q&A. So I think if you have questions, and I'm happy to fill them as best as I can. And I will tell us the goals. And all of 2 seconds I asked Julie if surviving a year would be a great goal, and she said, no, not really. But I wanted to introduce the team because they really are my support, and they are tremendous individuals, and they work very hard on behalf of your students, and they do it with compassion and heart, and sometimes some tough love. And I think that combination works really well. And I also think we work very well together at the end of a long day around 5:30, 4:45. We're all migrating and puzzling together, kind of thinking about the day and what we can do to improve. And you want that kind of synergy amongst the staff. So they really are amazing individuals, but collectively, I think we make a great team. And so, as you heard, 12th grade administrator, and administrators are assigned for all 4 years that they're in school and less than a week, so all of that. So we try to have consistency in both administrators and counselors. So your students get to know their administrator and counselor pretty well over the course of 4 years. With 550 plus in each class, some students have more needs than others, but we certainly are responsible for every student who's in our class. But in addition to their 12th grade, 11th grade, 10th grade, 9th grade respective positions, they also supervise areas in the department. So Joe Manana, he is our AP coordinator. He's also in charge of quite a few issues that are associated, or not should say issues, but challenges associated with 12th graders. Parking is a big one. Parking is a big one. But he's also in charge of the math department and the social studies department. In addition, so everyone is assigned departments in which they supervise all of the teachers, and also their team and then some other administrative responsibilities. So that is Joe Manana. Joe Manana and I worked together many years ago, in early 2000, and then he came back. This is his second year coming back as an assistant principal.
Second tour duty.
Yes, he was hanging out in the middle school for a little bit, and then came back and rejoined us last year, and I had his head support, and it's tremendous knowledge of reading has been incredible, especially in my position that happened last year. So I'll turn it over to Joe Manana. Joe.
Well, as you said, I was here several years ago, about 15 years ago. It was nice to be back. I've had the experience in the middle school, so I know what the middle schools are doing curriculum-wise to prepare students for high school. One of the things that Kim did talk about is we work very closely with certain departments. We work closely with each other administratively as well, because when a student might be a ninth grader, but it might be a social studies issue, I'll usually take the lead on it, but it might also go directly to the ninth grade administrator, which we do. So we work, so you might be bounced to either the administrator who is in charge of the actual department. We usually ask parents to go through the department chair first and then work with us, and then sometimes the actual grade dean or the grade administrator get involved. Something I'll just add about Ms. Hitchcock. One of the things that she's one that went to the college visit to Harvard. She is putting together this weekend is the first no homework weekend, where students are supposed to have no homework over the weekend. That's the no homework weekend. And really, it was geared toward trying to get a lot of our seniors toward the college application. Really spend that time for college essays. We're going to start Friday after school. Students have signed up. We're going to review some of the college essays that the students have, and then go into Saturday as well. There is a workshop, and she's going to share some of the stuff that she learned about some of the colleges, the admissions, as well as what it costs, the true cost of what it costs to go to some of the colleges and universities. That will be Saturday at 10:30. It's an hour presentation. And if you can't make it on Saturday, she's going to do again another presentation on Monday. So, that's really all I have to share right now. It's great to be here. I was also sharing with Julie that I came from a middle school, and my middle school, if we had this many people come, it was a surprise. It was really great to see the amount of people that were here. So, I know some people say that doesn't seem like much, but when I was coming from, great to see it. Thank you.
The next administrator, 11th grade administrator, is Mr. Joe Du Bois. We have the two Joes. They actually share space down in the lower admin suite. I wonder sometimes you know these two. Mr. Du Bois, he supervises the science department and the ESOL department and the world languages. Gracias, I forgot that one. And the world language departments, in addition to being the 11th grade administrator. And Joe and I have been both were assistant principals, started together at Wootton, and he's just a really great guy. And in addition to the departments and being the 11th grade administrator, he is also our master scheduler. So he is responsible for 2,200 plus students, having 7 classes plus a lunch, and all teachers being assigned to a class. And he did not sleep the night before, because in theory all of it's supposed to work, and it's not until the first day of school, and you look in the halls and say, okay, you're all in classes. So he did a phenomenal job with our schedule. Our schedule is one of the most complicated, I think, in the county because of all of our offerings. And he worked countless hours to make sure we were all up and running. So my friend Joe Du Bois.
It was the master schedule, and it worked out well. And it's one of those things. Really, we got about this month off, maybe a little bit of October, then we start up again for next year already. So it's one thing it's fun to do. It's like a big puzzle. But sort of my goals this year, I just wrote down a couple notes. As the 11th grade administrator, I always see it as my job, make sure that when they enter senior year, they're ready to graduate. I know they still need their math credit and their English credit, but that everything's in line. They have the program completed, either finished or started. SSL hours, they know how many they need and that there's a deadline. So my goal this year is really to make sure everybody by June is in a position to graduate the following year, and that work with the counselors and parents. But I'd say the biggest thing I want to focus on this year is trying to de-stress the kids, not just through the wellness committee, but just when you have parent conferences or kids come down, it's just trying to help them seek a balance in their schedule, because the 11th grade year is a very stressful year. Probably I'd say of the all 4 years, probably the most stressful So just trying to get them to see the big picture. And whether it's meeting with parents or just them individually or the counselors, that's actually probably the thing I enjoyed most is going over what they need for next year and so forth. And just, it's all going to be fine. If they work with Ms. Hitchcock, it's all going to work out well. So they don't have to panic too much. But thank you for having us here tonight. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Bolden again.
And our newest administrator, our newbie, is Miss Doveman. She is the 10th grade administrator. This is actually her second year. Last year, Crystal served as an acting assistant principal with all of the shifts when Dr. Doran passed away. And she is continuing on with our 10th grade administrators. She supervises it's a lot, technology, health, PE, and FACS departments. In addition, she's in charge of the wellness committee. So she does a phenomenal job. We planned our first recess, yay, and it went off without a hitch for the kids during lunch. But she's a very hard worker, and she looks out for the kiddos, and that's what she calls them, and her lovelies. And they certainly are. They give her a run for her money. 10th grade years. Interesting. Ninth grade, they're still learning some things. 10th grade, they think they know everything. It's interesting. So she's having an interesting year with her 10th graders. So I'll turn it over to Crystal Doveman.
Good evening. I'm having a great year with the 10th graders. It's actually really great to see from 9th grade, the way that they transition into 10th grade, and they're more confident. They know what they're doing in the hallways. And then I can always be like, so you know what you're supposed to be doing. So let's make sure that you're getting where you're supposed to be getting to. But it was really great to see them all come back this year. As Ms. Bolden said, I am assisting with the wellness committee this year. Paul Kirk, who works in our PE department, he is the staff member that helps to oversee that committee, and we work very closely with the PTSA, and I've had some meetings with both Jenya and Julia in terms of what we're looking to do this year. So if you do have any ideas or suggestions, or you have people in the community that can assist with that. Last year we did our outdoor recesses, and we had our first one this year that went off really, really well. We've done massages for staff. We've done some different exercise classes. So we're really looking to continue with that this year and to do a combined effort with both the students and the staff members. I'm also in charge of testing. We have the PSATs coming up on October 19th. And then in the spring, we'll also have our PARC and our HSA assessments. So information will come out about that in the spring. But if you do have questions regarding any testing, please, you can reach out to your counselor. You can also reach out to me. We're just starting to get some information in regards to this year. But our first big task is PSATs, which I said is on October 19th. So if you haven't signed up your child yet, it's $10 for 9th graders. 10th graders are free. There's no fee. There's no form that needs to be filled out. And for our 11th graders, it's $15. And during the 11th grade year is when they can qualify for the National Merit Scholarship. So I'm very excited to continue with this school year, and it's great to see you all tonight.
And last but not least, our 9th grade administrator, Dr. Ira Thomas. He's an oldie but goodie. He's rejoining us, similar to Joe Mamana. He was last here 4 years ago as an assistant principal. In the interim, he was at Blair Ewing School. And Dr. Thomas is very excited to be back at Wootton High School. He supervises the English department and the special education department. He also works with awards, and he's the co-lead for our AP program, our AP testing, because it's huge, and we test over 2,500, make over 2,500 tests every year. So we make sure that we have a few administrators who work on that. And he's also in charge of our 9th graders. So Dr. Thomas, welcome back.
Good evening, everyone. How many 9th grade parents are here? Okay. Great. Let's give you a hand, because in 2020, your young person is going to walk across the stage at Constitution Hall. And we're all going to shake their hand. As Ms. Bolden said, I'm on a second tour of duty as well. And I am very excited to be back at Wootton. As the freshman administrator, the thing I try to do right away is captivate your student, get their attention right away, and begin to set that trajectory to graduation. and try to get them right away to trust me and let them know I know exactly what you're going through. And I was there once before, exactly where you are. And to just instill in them confidence, instill in them that they do not have to struggle by themselves, that there are so many resources and supports here at Wootton High School to assist them. And I believe once I get them to trust me, and, you know, we had an opportunity to do what we call admin chats, that each administrator has almost a full day to be in front of all of our students. And you basically get a chance to get to know them a little, but also let them know where you want them to go and give them your goal for the year. And I believe my class is going to be one of the greatest classes of Wootton High School, because I'm going to work with them day in and day out. We have phenomenal kids, and our kids are going to do great things. And I'm just happy and very honored to be part of that process with them. My office is in the main office. If you need to speak to me, please come in at any time. Our door is always open. As I tell my students, I told them during our admin chats, I said, you know, I wear Rockports because Rockports are very quiet, and you cannot hear me coming as I get to walk in and out of their classrooms to see what they're doing. And I'm going to tell you, this ninth grade class has already impressed a lot of people. They're really working hard. They're really doing what they need to do. So they're making my job a little easy. But I really enjoy working with your students. And thank you so much for your support. And just finally, there are going to be some bumps in the road. Okay? There are going to be some bumps in the road, but we're going to get over it, because the goal is 2020 graduation. Okay? You with me? Okay, because we're partners in this process. Okay? And we've got to let our kids know that we're partners, and we're going to get them from ninth grade all the way to 2020, and they're going to go on to do great things. And we're all going to sit in the back and say, wow, we did it. So thank you so much, and thank you for all the work you do for our teachers and students.
I hope you hear the commitment and dedication. This is a great group, and they really do try at all times to keep this very simple focus. What's in the best interest of the student? And we try to weigh that as we're moving through. We don't always get it all right. As Dr. Thomas says, there are bumps and bruises sometimes, but we always try to make it right. We always try to do what's in the best interest. And I'm very thankful that we have tremendous partnerships with our parents to make that happen. And so I supervise the counseling department. I'm also in charge of staff development and the school improvement focus for the school. Seems like it's a pretty good thing to do there. And I also work very closely with the resource teachers, or all the department chairs who head each of the departments. So those are some of my areas of responsibility as it pertains to how we structure things. Again, we have the structures in place so that it's an organized system of making sure that we're able to get everything done that we need to get done, obviously, in a way that works well for our students and for our school and our staff. So as we are moving in, I asked, well, what were some of the hot issues in terms of the school? I'll begin, I'm not going to begin there, but I will come back to that. But our school improvement focus for the year is once again having a focus on literacy and having a focus on how students interact and engaged in complex and varied text. We've been working on literacy in terms of engagement in text, because it gets to the core of thinking skills and writing skills, and how students are analyzing and synthesizing information, whether it's in a traditional English class and literature, or if it's in a math class and interpreting a graph. It falls in line with Common Core. It falls in line with with some of the information that we receive in terms of where students are continuing to work. And in every area, we work very closely with teachers in providing professional development around how they engage in complex and a variety of texts. In our school, our students do really well. Overall, we have over 96% graduation rate. We have students who are getting admitted to colleges at a tremendous rate. We are, having students do well in their classes as they're coming in, but also in their transition. Our ineligibility rate for last year was 3.6. That's a total of 80 students out of 2,200 students who fell below a 2.0. They are a target because we want all students. All students means all in terms of academic success. So we've also spent some time in putting supports in place and the appropriate supports in place for all of our students and making sure that they are getting the supports that they need in order to meet their academic goals. We have a population that they reach for the stars. They make appropriate stretches. And as Joe Du Bois said, sometimes we're like, well, wait a minute, do you really need to take 6 AP classes this year? And so on the other side, there's a population that we're continuing to push and say you need to stretch. And there's a population that says, you need to slow down. We need to make sure that your schedule matches, the time that you have in your day when you also are on the soccer team and the this and the that. I mean, we have really engaged students. And so we really have been stressing this focus on wellness, on balance, on making sure there's time in your day to really be able to accomplish everything. And it's not a perfect way in which we are trying to guide students because every student is unique and individual, and we try to take that into account to give more general advice in terms of how to balance the load, but also very specific to a student's need. So again, I think the overall message is that we are trying really hard to not only plan for academic success of our students and have our teachers engage in professional development, looking at data for their classrooms to say, this is where things are going well, this is not where it's going well. What kinds of adjustments do we need to make? And also to look overall at our school to say, what are the areas that we're still concerned about in terms of social, emotional well-being, and how do we continue to address that? And so I think one of the biggest changes, and it relates to this, is a switch to one lunch. We started last year, actually we've been having this conversation, I think, since early 2000, but we started really last year and doing a lot of research about our current lunch situation, which was we had 3 lunches, and what the trend seems to be in the county, all but 2 schools we said have 1 lunch period. And I told you about that schedule that Joe Du Bois puts together. We were having some challenges in terms of having all of the students be able to be loaded into the schedule because of the 3 lunches and how that played on the schedule. We wanted to do professional development for our staff during the day. We wanted to avoid some of those phone calls that we get from parents sometimes. It says, my little darling has no one in their lunch period. Can we please switch their schedule so that they have some friends in lunch? And we also wanted to work on some of the social emotional of, my student has 3rd or 4th period lunch, but their teacher is only off 6th period lunch. And after school, they go to this, and this. And, is there a way to readjust? And so we did some research. We went to some schools and we made this shift to 1 lunch. And it's a big shift. It's absolutely a big shift for our students and for our staff. One that we're actually really enjoying. One the part that I love most is that I have 45 minutes of my day of just kid time. I'm in the halls. They are starting to you see where people are going. We know where they are because the 9th grade boys are in this little corner up here. A certain group is here, a certain group is there. So it feels like it's big and it's overwhelming for someone who's not here. But in here, it's really fun to see all of the kids engaged. It's also meant that it opens up the campus in ways that we haven't been able to before. We have 3 really lovely courtyards, one with a gazebo that we never opened because the noise level during the lunch shifts that people were not available or that people were teaching, so we never could open up courtyards. We had and we have intramurals, so kids who need to go and run around the gym were able to do that because there's no lunch or there's nothing going on in the gym, so kids can do intramurals during lunch. They see their teachers during lunch. We have Science Honor Society, Math Honor Society tutoring during lunch. I think both Jinya and Julie have been here during lunch, and it's going well for the students. Again, it's a bit of adjustment, but I think overall it was a good decision to move to one lunch. The biggest feedback that I've gotten from seniors is, why is it a closed lunch? We want to be able to go off campus, and that just gives me gray hairs just thinking about it right now because there's nothing really close. Falls Grove is too far. If you've been over there around 11:30 to noon, trying to get into the, and it just drives me crazy to even think about kids pulling into that parking lot and trying to make it in a 45-minute period. So that's off the table right now. The other popular question from parents has been, what about food trucks? That sort of flies in the face of some of the nutritional guidelines that we have for Montgomery County Public Schools. So food trucks cannot be on our campus during the school day. They have to be so many feet away from the campus. And we don't really, unfortunately, have a great space that we could park food trucks on Wootton Parkway. You know, how you thought the traffic was bad in the morning. Just imagine that scenario. So there's some, we're trying to think about upgrades, but what's realistic in terms of keeping students safe and keeping them on campus. They are allowed to be outside. They are allowed to be in classrooms. So it really has been fun to see what's been happening here. We start lunch at 11:15. That's the dismissal. And so you can see we've opened up a kiosk in the commons area. And so by 11:25 or so, you know, the lines are pretty much done. Kids are getting what they want. And they're able to, they've started to understand, I can go and see my teacher first, and then I can go down to the cafeteria or go to the commons area and get food. They're all over the place. We open up some of the labs, we open up classrooms. Teachers are saying, oh, come on in if you need a place to study or if you just want to hang out, which is awesome because of that relationship building. And in some ways, having a school of 2,200, having smaller spaces for students, for teachers, it makes it feel a little bit smaller. And then they're in the hallways. And again, we can start to see where students are migrating and where they're hanging out. So there's a certain group in the science hall and they do calisthenics, every day, push-ups and things. So I go by and see what the exercise for the day is. It's just really fun to see all the kids, and that stress level is coming down a bit that they have this time. They eat in like 5.5 seconds. So that's not really a concern. We also set up tables in the auditorium. That's a quieter space. I'd say mostly 9th grade. I saw some 12th graders over there today, but mostly 9th graders. Some of these pictures were taken during the first rainy day, so we can also get a sense of when the kids are not outside, what does it still feel like? And it still feels pretty manageable throughout. As Crystal mentioned, we had our first outdoor recess. We started this last year during exam weeks as a way to blow off some steam, and the kids loved it. They were like, when are we doing another recess? And so we had our first recess. Basically, they set up ultimate frisbee, cornhole, I lost, and the kids can hang out, and we have music, and they go out and relax. If it's a really beautiful day, it works out really, really great for the kids to just have some time. And so that's the overview. So far, as I said, I think it's going well. Of course, it's an adjustment because we're moving from 3 to 1. But the staff really also, they really have enjoyed it so far. So that's the one lunch. Oh, I moved from something positive to required quarterly assessments. Did anyone have any questions or thoughts about it? Yes, sir.
Can you talk about the fire events and what kids are supposed to do?
I
Know where to go when it went off because it was during?
Yes, that's a great question. And we were planning a fire drill for tomorrow. And we debated whether or not we have 10 required fire drills per year. And we debated on whether or not we wanted to have it during lunch. Essentially, if they are in a place of transition, they are to go to the nearest exit. And so most of the students were leaving from the commons. They were coming up to the cafeteria. We had security posted to say, we're just exiting the building at that point. Most of the students were wound up in the stadium. Some students, we have several locations. One is the stadium, one is the baseball field, and one is right behind near the portables as places for students to go. Depending on where they were in the building, most of the students ended up in the stadium, but those were the 3 locations, and it really just depends. We have signs posted if they're here in the media center, if they're all over the place, but the idea in an emergency is that you go to the nearest exit.
So if it's a drill, you count, but in this situation, there's just no count, and if that's the answer, it's not.
Right. If in a drill, we take attendance, and something like this, depending on how long it would go, depending on what the emergency was, we would put students with a teacher because the teachers were available. We would take attendance, and then we would start coordinating that with our list of students that we have for that day. That part would take a little bit more time because at that point we're getting that information from central office because we don't have access to the building. But that's typically what would happen if it turned out to be a real event. And the students did a really great job. They were like, yes, fire drill. Like, no, this is unplanned. What is happening here? It's fascinating what happens in reactions and things. But they did a great job going out. All of the administrators and security, we have designated places. That's why we have fire drills every year, 10 of them. But I think the lesson that we're learning here is just to make sure that students, again, we usher them out. We stay behind a little bit till before the fire marshal gets here and kicks us all out. But we stay behind to make sure students are out of the building. They behave once they found out that it wasn't a planned fire drill, it changes for them, and they help us to get out of the building and do what they're supposed to do. Basically, dirt or dust got caught in one of the smoke sensors, and that set it off. They're incredibly sensitive, and so we had someone from maintenance looking at it. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I have one question, but just curious also by myself. My son is in 10th grade. I think since they joined the high school, they only the polls. I heard some people said the school invited some people to some seminar or something. Said the poll is not good for players or something.
A seminar? I missed the last part.
I don't know if something come but other people told me that the school has invited some people. Talking about the poll is not good, so school needs some poll for lunch.
For
I don't know. Yeah.
For food.
Free or something.
pork?
There's no pork.
This, I'm sorry?
I think you're saying that there's no pork for lunch anymore.
Oh, I don't know if that's true or
I don't
not.
know if it's or not, but my son is in the high school.
That's a great question. I've seen lots of chicken nuggets and patties and salads, but I've not seen whether or not they've served pork. I don't know. I'll have to look and see.
I believe it, but it's true that some people calling is that suppose invited some people, some experts that the pork is not good for health.
No, we haven't done that. I don't know if through nutrition class, it may be through a nutrition class or something, they were learning about foods, but there's nothing official in the lunch room that we're not serving pork. It could be that it's just not popular and people don't eat it, so they don't serve it. But I don't know about that. Yeah. Yeah, it's a centralized meal menu. We can cater it a little bit. So we sell iced coffee decaffeinated. But yeah, we can cater it a little bit, but the menu is set by the school system. Yeah. Well, let's jump into some fun, shall we? As you know, final exams, semester exams, have gone bye-bye this year, and they have been replaced with quarterly assessments. Can you all hand out the new grading? Thank you. And the quarterly assessments are new this year in some ways, not new in other ways. Your students, if they've been in English class, they've been taking formative assessments, which are on par with what the required quarterly assessments, the RQAs. RQAs are designed to give more of a formative approach as opposed to the summative approach of the final exam. And what that means is that all of the courses that used to have a final exam attached to them, and I think I'm sorry if you can't see that, but these are all of the courses, includes honors courses, that used to have a final exam. They now have a quarterly assessment, a required quarterly assessment that accounts for 10% of that particular quarter grade. And if you'd like, I can post this on the website, or I can give it to Jenya so that you all can post it on the PTSA website. So all of these courses have this required quarterly assessment. Again, it counts for 10% of the marking period grade. Do you want me to go back to that other one? Okay. It accounts for 10% of the marking period grade. It is already programmed in a teacher's gradebook, and each discipline has a different window of time in which they administer the required quarterly exam. So your students are not going to come home and say, I have required quarterly exams in all of my classes next week. It's not designed to do that. They start typically around week 4, and some of them go as late as week 9, so that depending on what the units are associated with those quarterly assessments, that's what they will be tested on through the required quarterly assessments. They're really interesting in design. I don't want to go there yet. Some of them will require a 2-period experience. One in English, for example. One day they do more of a multiple choice to look at how they're able to synthesize and analyze a text. And then the next day, for example, they will write a response. And so they're park-like testing and writing and common tasks and project-based. And they, as I said, they're a separate category in the grade book. I do believe, and I have to verify this, that they can go home so kids can see what they've done. They don't have the same test security around them as the final exams. And we're still experimenting for us how we're going to roll it out. So for each department, we have testing days. And so we're trying to see, so for example, there's a possibility that 2 departments could assign quarterly assessments in the same assessment window, like week 6 and 7 of a marking period. And we want to make sure that there isn't too much overload. So we've been working in instructional leadership to determine when would be best to take it. From teaching English and administering the formative assessments some time ago, they felt more, they didn't feel the same stress as, for example, a final exam. You're sitting there 2 hours and all of that. And so as we roll this out, I do believe that they are going to be, again, they're more formative in nature, testing on what students have done so far, 10% of the quarter grade. And it's to be in process so that we are determining if students are learning what they should be learning, and then making adjustment to our instruction to make sure that they are. What this means for grades, I hope you've seen this already, is the MCPS grading scale. And this was something that a lot of stakeholders had a say in terms of how the grading scale would be determined now that exams are no longer here. And as you can see, most of them, with the exception of the courses, or with the exception of the scales that have an asterisk by them as primarily what the MCPS grading high school scale was before. I really don't have a sense yet, since it's so new, what this means. I know for our students, they worked really hard first and second quarter or third and fourth quarter because they didn't want the pressure of the exam. And so a lot of times they would go, BB, so that they knew what their grade would be before they went into the exam. So some of our students, they know what they would need on the final exam if they wanted to bump up another letter grade. I mean, they're smart, savvy people, and they should be figuring it out in terms of what they're doing there. My personal opinion is that it feels very generous to the student in terms of grades. That's what it feels like. Like, for example, that AB is an A. Please don't ask me any questions about why I can't answer that. I think it was, again, to really look at effort and all of that as well. But that's where we are. Yes, sir.
Is that for countywide?
This is countywide, absolutely.
And also from first grade to fourth grade?
No, there is a slightly different scale, and I did not include it. If you go on the MCPS website for grading and reporting, it tells the breakdown for elementary school and middle school.
So that is for high school?
This is for high school. I want to say middle school is very similar.
Yes.
Don't quote me on that, if not the same, but it's very similar in terms of the breakdowns. Okay.
Especially for the courses in middle school that you're getting high school credit for.
Right.
It's exactly like this.
That's true. And one of the changes, again, for middle school is that, I'm at the middle school. If a student was taking a course for high school credit, they had to pass the exam in order to get credit for it as a high school course. That's not the case anymore. So it's scale again in terms of showing if they've earned credit for it. Yes.
Is it sort of all the courses except AP?
All of the courses, great question. The required quarterly assessments are not in AP courses. So there was not going to be an automatic 10% category there. And we've always had to, for the final exam for AP, it's always been a little different because it's usually project-based, because they usually take the test and that's what we really want them to do. So they would do some sort of project, and there's a similar model for that. But this grading scale is for all courses in MCPS. The required quarterly assessments right now are only attached to courses, all of these courses that used to have a final exam. Does that make sense? And again, it's directly in the teacher's grade book. So and it's directly in the teacher's grade book, a 10% category for required quarterly assessments. There was another point. Any other questions about that? There was another, Jinya.
So you just said this is kind of generous to students without resolving later GPAs.
Say that again. I need a pause before I give my answer.
With the
there.
GPAs for students be inflated, so you have a lot of more A's than.
Now, in some ways, yes, but remember you have to look countywide. So what's happening at Wootton may not necessarily be happening in all of the other high schools in terms of, how students are achieving in this grade book. And so there was a real effort to make that equitable. And Linda mentioned the profile, but we provide lots of information to colleges in terms of what the grade consists of, how that grade is earned from a county perspective and also a school's perspective of what it means. And we offer information about how many honors courses, how many AP courses, so they can get a sense of the school within this big county. Sir. Yes.
I understand that Wootton officially will not really rank the students, right? But I understand also while applying for college, in your application, the counselor or the school need to indicate where the student sits.
Percentile.
1% or whatever.
Yes.
But with, as Jana said, this is the inflated grading system. So how can you differentiate people?
There's still going to be a GPA attached to how a student has done and where they fall in that percentile. It's not just Wootton. We don't rank as a county. So that's a county policy. It's not that we've decided to do something different. But again, I think what's important for me is that what we're able to say, here's the coursework that a student at Wootton pursues, and here's what that A means, here's what that B means. And we have to be very explicit in terms of, the kinds of coursework, the kinds of opportunities that are offered here to help during the college admissions. And that's all tied to that. It's all tied to the college profile and what we share with colleges about how our students are doing. I don't know how this is going to go. I'll be honest. I haven't quite, I think it has to roll out. We were asking questions today. Well, what about a student who misses a quarter because they're sick or something happens and they're not available for learning? How do we calculate that final grade? So there are still some questions I think that as a system we're working out.
Yeah, it sounds as though basically the county is basically giving the students within the
Yes.
Which makes sense because when you look at the diversity,
Mhm.
when you're coming to county school, people from all the background and culture, in the end, it really does come down to giving us
Mhm. That's very true as well. Absolutely. Now, this happened before our new superintendent, Dr. Smith, and I'm very excited by Dr. Smith. If you haven't heard him speak, I'm just excited by his leadership and the direction he wants to go for our county. And so I'm interested in knowing what will happen with this as we move forward. There's a question for me in terms of this is something that, as a new superintendent, he would like to continue to have in place. I don't know, but it's a question that I have as a leader. So the next topic I was asked to discuss is the start time, the before Labor Day, after Labor Day. I have the great pleasure of serving on the 2017-2018 county calendar committee for Montgomery County. And we came up with this calendar, remember? And we were starting earlier and ending later and all of that. As we stand now, the governor has issued a decree. No, he said that we will start after Labor Day. There's some discussion, if you've been following the news media on this, of whether or not he's able to issue that. But right now, the county has to move forward with, what the governor has suggested or implemented until there's some resolution on whether or not legally he could do so. So I don't have any answers for you. I know that tonight, the Board of Ed Policy Committee is meeting on the calendar. We met last week to say, well, the what ifs. What if we are still starting before Labor Day, if that's granted, because there was some rather vague language in the order that for a compelling reason that a county could have a waiver to start after. So we don't know what a compelling reason would be and if a waiver would be granted. So there are probably a lot more questions than there are answers at this time, but I know and trust that the county has some ideas about if it's a before Labor Day start and if it's a after Labor Day start, how to get the 184 instructional days in there, and how to adjust the calendar. So the after Labor Day start would mean that teachers would come back a week early and students would come back directly after Labor Day. And we would end somewhere around June 15th for students, and then teachers would continue on with a couple more professional days after that. And we just have to sort of wait and see. I didn't even put that on the slide because I don't have any news to update you on that. Yes, sir.
I haven't voted. It's actually made at the state level. I guess it's the state superintendent who's involved in the process of completing the study requirements like that at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently we asked for a couple of them.
We have, absolutely.
Used up our snow days.
Yes.
And they're not real keen on giving them out anymore because they've been getting a day or two of waivers the last couple of years.
Right.
The weather.
Yeah.
Is that kind of the
Well,
Might
that's
be getting
that's
on it.
another great question too. You know, I mean,
Because it really
Allegheny.
messes up my kids got to notice at the end of the year. I just said, you're not going because I think the school year's extended. I was going to get the waivers.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. So the calendar the original calendar we came up with, we had contingency days built in, so they're not automatically at the end of the year.
Mhm.
And we had like a contingency day in February and one in May that we could use it if we needed to, if we already figured out we have too many days. But truly, if we're starting after Labor Day, some of that comes off the table, you know, in terms of how much flexibility we actually have during the school day. The best thinking is that a waiver would be possibly around Allegheny County or Garrett County because of all of the snow that they receive during the course of the year, even more than us. And there's, you know, it's probably improbable that they would be able to get the school days in with all the snow that they receive. So it really is a big question mark. You know, I don't know if the county will pursue a waiver. There are a lot of legal and political, or more legal issues of when this would be taken up by the, you know, the committee, and it would be by January, and that's very late to get a calendar out for the next school year. So I don't have answers, except for the policy committee for the Board of Ed was meeting tonight and to put their thinking about it. So I'm sure they want to get something out pretty soon in terms of what direction they'll be able to go.
So I heard Montgomery County actually proposed earlier this.
Well, 1 week earlier.
Stuff earlier.
We did.
Which makes a lot of sense because after AP exam,
Mhm.
the instructional time.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
so with this new mandate, is it that the best solution will be not moving, or are we still thinking about moving it?
Again, I really can't speak for what the board will do in terms of if they will go forward with. At this point, it seems like the only way forward, unless they find some reason that Governor Hogan could not issue that, you know, order, that the county would have to apply for a waiver. And there are lots of scenarios that play out if that should happen. And so it's, you know, the county, of course, would like to start earlier. That's what we're proposing, and end earlier after exams. But it really is a wait and see game. Those are the two options. If right now, I think we are in the mode for we're starting after Labor Day because that's currently, you know, the thought and what's happened so far. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. Stay tuned, folks.
There was an article on one of the local newspapers in Germantown.
Mhm.
They're saying most likely the county is going to apply for a waiver.
Mhm.
And they also said if they're not to apply for a waiver, there can be a chance they're going to shorten the spring break or winter break, which our students definitely.
No, they can't shorten the winter break because there's also a mandate by the COMAR that says students must be off from December 24th, I believe it is, to July, or to July, I wish, January 1st. So they can't mess with winter break. Spring break would be on the table, absolutely. But again, it's
also the issue that, you know, they additional days,
contingency days, absolutely.
contingency days, whereas a lot of the other counties don't do
Right.
that.
And also
So
for
that would
APS,
go back to what the gentleman said there. Is
Yes.
if those 4 days are not in there, we would definitely be asking for waivers more often
Right.
because we don't have those 4 days back.
I've heard mistakes when it's not too thrilled about training.
Exactly.
That's that
Right.
genre.
Exactly.
Same.
So it really is a wait and see to see what the policy
Comes
committee
out, yeah.
comes out with, whether they're going to apply for the waiver. And again, the language in the actual order is pretty vague. It says at this point, I'm sure they're going to define it and explain what a compelling reason would be. So I think that there are even questions about, well, what would be a compelling reason for applying for a waiver? So that would be another big question to answer to see whether or not the county moves forward with the waiver or not. The county is prepared in terms of a start date before Labor Day and a start date after Labor Day.
One of the other strong arguments is the students who are taking APs, they need
Mhm.
more time to prepare.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're aware.
But
Yeah.
also, if they started earlier, it also for the park testing too, because it would give them an additional week, not just for the AP, but for the park testing.
Well, for park testing, it's a little different. It has to happen after so many instructional days. But yeah, it just depends on, you know, how many instruction. You can't, I can't remember how many days, but there has to be so many days of instruction before park can be administered. And as soon as we know, we'll all know. I'm sure this is a hot topic in Maryland at this time. Yes.
Yeah, first of all, what's your biggest challenge in terms of how is it?
I think I have concerns about, the testing calendar and when students are being tested and what happens after that. It's really weird that you would have, a final assessment, and then it's like, okay, we have 3 more weeks of school, yay! It seems like it's sort of like a college class. You take your final and you're done, but that's not the case. I think beyond that, I think it's just a paradigm shift, in terms of we're starting before Labor Day, we're starting after Labor Day. I don't know if there would be any impact on school or any kind of like the summer school schedule or summer enrichment. I can't see that there would be, any challenges there. But it really just feels like more of a paradigm shift, and with the amount of testing that our students have in terms of where that testing, how that testing is once it's completed and leading up to the testing. Do we have enough time to do all of that? Yes.
Hogan didn't say this, but when Glendinning had asked for schools to start after Labor Day, it was couched as an economic reason.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to be sure there were still lifeguards at Ocean City
Mm-hmm.
and everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That was the reason. It
Yeah.
wasn't about education.
Yeah, and I think that this one, has some economic ties to it. I'm curious about the weather. It seems like things are getting knocked out in September because of all of the crazy weather that we have. So we'll see. We stay tuned. I don't think we've heard the last of it. We get a daily update on where we are with things with the start date. So I'm sure the county will have to make a decision soon in terms of whether they're going to apply for a waiver, whether they're, it's going to be after Labor Day start. And again, I think the county is prepared to roll out something. There'll be some discussions around how to get those days in. But I feel like the county is prepared to answer those questions.
Does that affect also the dates that they have to pre-post these way in advance too, the ACT and the ACT? When they're given, you not enough time to really have the tests.
Yeah, those are planned well in advance, and there's an international piece. They have to be given at the same time internationally. So I don't think it'll have a big impact on that. But I think everything's up for grabs in terms of what impact we're going to see because of a shift in that start time.
And we're a state of 5 million people. What influence do we have on the nation?
Right.
I don't think they really care
Yeah.
what Maryland does.
Yeah, that's true.
PTS and ACT.
Yeah.
We're just small potato.
Right. Well, I'm looking at the time. It's 9:05, and Julie does this lovely thing where she starts to inch closer and closer to the presenter. And so I'm going to take my cue and say thank you all so much for just being an amazing group of people to work with. And I'm going to turn it over to Julie.
Very much. And I would want to tell you briefly about our next very, very important meeting where we would like to have everyone attend. But first, I would like to say thank you to Kim Bolden and all of our administrators for being here. This is a late night, and just as all of you are here, we thank them for coming. You can tell that our kids are in great hands, right? They are just absolutely in great hands because they care so much about our kids. They are wonderful, all of them, and their experience and so on is wonderful for all of our kids here. So let's give them another great round of applause. Thanks so much. Okay, and let me tell you just real quickly about our next meeting. It just completely switch gears here. It is, it's going to be about this crisis of young people who are overdosing on opioids and other synthetic drugs. And last year, a new program was launched called Speak Up, Save a Life. I don't know if any of you have heard of this. Has anybody heard of this program? It is actually, it's a multi-agency program. It includes the Montgomery County Police Department and many other programs as well. And the PTSA is going to welcome Mr. Steve Chaikin. He is the Senior Assistant State's Attorney in Montgomery County, and he will be here on the regular meeting night, which will be Tuesday, October 18th. And it will be in the auditorium because we're hoping to have everyone here, children, your students, and the parents attending. And it's going to be a special panel discussion. And it will be discussing the Good Samaritan law and real life cases. And the expert speakers will include a young person in recovery, a local police commander, and a local doctor or nurse. And there may be some other people as well on this panel. So it's going to be probably pretty intense and, some hard hitting, facts and so on. It's certainly going to be important for everybody to be there. And last year they presented to over 10,000 students in Montgomery County. And you will certainly have an opportunity to ask questions to the panel. And what the reason that they want everybody to be there is the panel presentation is for high school students and parents regarding drugs, heroin, overdosing, and the laws. And it is critical for children to know that the new Good Samaritan law would allow them to save a life by calling 911 in a crisis situation involving drugs and alcohol, and they themselves would not get in trouble. So they really do want to get this, this word out. So this is, again, it's going to be October 18th, 7 p.m. auditorium. So we'll be getting this word out on the Patriot email, and I believe that you will be doing Connect Ed with the parents, and so you'll be hearing a lot about it. So I wanted to let you know about that, and thank you all for coming. But I also think that there could be some other announcements. Diana? Yes.
Homecoming decoration is going to be on October 21st, and we have I've met with the SGA, and they've indicated what they want. So we're going to have sign up. You guys want to help with cleanup and help decoration. That's the next activity.
Rebecca will need a lot of people. Last year we had about 25 people helping decorate, so she'll need a lot. Anyone else?
Do we know what the theme is?
Yes, we do. Rebecca?
The theme is around the world. Yeah. And they've chosen, each class has chosen different states as well as countries. So they have Cape Town, Greece, New York. No, New York. They have Brazil, London, Paris, Las Vegas, Hawaii. It should be fun.
That's centered in the United States around the world.
Yeah. Big cities within the world.
I gotta get home. We gotta get back here. I made my night. Sometimes what we do is if there's open, provided that the students do well,
Too late. Too late. What time is it? 9:15. An hour. Did you tell the boys? Not yet. Oh, really? All right. Okay. Is he gonna go get Matt?